The International Space Station hovered in its serene orbit, Earth's radiant blues and whites sprawling beneath it like a living masterpiece. Inside, Commander Avery adjusted her headset, her gaze fixed on a diagnostic panel. It had been a routine day until the station's instruments picked up an anomaly. A blip on their radar. Massive, moving fast, and closing in on Earth's orbit. "Avery to Houston," she said, her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. "We're detecting an object entering high orbit. Size estimates are off the charts. Could this be a false reading?" "Negative, ISS," replied a voice from Mission Control, laced with urgency. "We're tracking it too. Visual confirmation required." Avery floated toward the observation module, her heart pounding. The other crew members, sensing the shift in her tone, followed silently. As they peered out into the void, a shadow began to emerge against the backdrop of stars. It wasn't a shadow cast by a celestial body, but something far more deliberate, a gargantuan vessel, its sheer scale unlike anything recorded in human history. The ship's surface glinted, its contours smooth yet intricately detailed with glowing glyphs that pulsated in rhythmic harmony. "Houston," Avery said, struggling to keep her voice steady, "we have visual. You're going to want to see this." The crew scrambled to activate their cameras, feeding live visuals back to Mission Control. The room in Houston descended into stunned silence as the image appeared on their monitors. A collective gasp echoed through the space as scientists, engineers, and military officials stared at the alien craft. Its enormity was humbling, and its presence radiated a sense of deliberate purpose. What are we looking at?" someone in Mission Control murmured. Avery cut in. "It's deploying smaller crafts. They're breaking off and heading into the atmosphere." The smaller ships, sleek and dart-like, moved with unnerving precision. They formed a coordinated pattern, descending toward Earth's surface like falcons diving for prey. Alarms blared across global monitoring stations. The world below braced for the unknown. The first impacts were reported within minutes. In Washington, D.C., President Hale was rushed into the Situation Room. Military advisors scrambled to make sense of the sudden invasion, but answers were elusive. The alien crafts targeted strategic locations, military bases, communication hubs, and energy grids. Their energy weapons struck with surgical accuracy, disabling defenses and plunging cities into chaos. In Tokyo, the skyline erupted into a cacophony of light and sound as alien drones emerged from their crafts, scanning and neutralizing resistance. Civilians fled in terror as soldiers struggled to contain the onslaught. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower's shadow became a battlefield as alien forces established control points. The same scenes played out in cities across the globe, humanity's defenses woefully inadequate against the technological superiority of the invaders. Back on the ISS, Avery and her crew could do little but watch. The live feeds from Earth painted a grim picture. Smoke rose from cities, the bright lights of civilization dimmed under the alien assault. The station's usually peaceful vantage point now offered a front-row seat to humanity's darkest hour. "We've got to do something," muttered Dr. Elena Ruiz, the station's astrophysicist. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the console. Avery shook her head. "We're not equipped for this. All we can do is relay information and hope." Ruiz turned to face her, eyes blazing. "Hope? That thing up here. It's orchestrating everything. If we could disrupt its command, maybe Earth has a chance. And how do you propose we do that?" Avery snapped, her composure slipping. "Throw a wrench into its engines?" Before Ruiz could respond, the station shuddered. Warning lights flared, and alarms blared through the corridors. "Impact alert. Something's locked onto us," cried Lieutenant Carter, the ISS's engineer. On the external cameras, a small alien probe had detached from the mothership and was approaching fast. Its sleek, insect-like design glowed ominously as it latched onto the station's hull. "Brace for." Avery's warning was cut short as the station rocked violently. The probe began to emit pulses of energy, systematically disabling systems. The crew scrambled to stabilize the station, their training the only thing keeping them from succumbing to panic. "Houston, we're under attack." Avery shouted into her comms. Systems failing. Requesting immediate guidance. Mission Control's response crackled through the interference. ISS, focus on containment. We're assessing options. Hold tight. Ruiz, her fear momentarily forgotten, analyzed the probe's activity. It's not trying to destroy us. It's gathering data. Studying us. Well, it can study a broken probe, Carter growled, rushing to the airlock with a makeshift toolkit. I'll handle it. You're going out there? Ruiz asked incredulously. Got a better idea? Carter shot back, sealing his helmet. The crew watched anxiously as Carter ventured outside. Clinging to the station's exterior, he approached the alien probe. It whirred and pulsed, its alien script glowing brighter as if aware of his presence. Carter's gloved hands worked quickly, bypassing the probe's shell to access its core. Sparks flew as he severed its energy lines. With a final jolt, the probe went dark, detaching from the station and drifting into the void. Probe neutralized, Carter reported, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. He returned inside to relieved cheers from the crew, but their victory was short-lived. On the monitors, the mothership began to shift, its movements deliberate and menacing. It was reacting to their defiance. Houston, the mothership's changing position, Avery reported. Oh God, it's aiming at us. Mission Control erupted into frantic chatter. ISS, evacuate immediately. Use the escape pods. That's an order. The crew moved quickly, strapping into the pods as the station systems continued to fail. Avery was the last to board, her eyes lingering on the view of Earth one final time. The mothership loomed larger, its glyphs glowing ominously as energy gathered at its core. She slammed the hatch shut and initiated the launch sequence. The escape pods hurtled toward Earth, their occupants bracing for re-entry. Behind them, the ISS exploded in a brilliant flash, the mothership's beam tearing it apart. The crew could only watch in horror as their home in orbit became a fiery memory. As the pods descended, communication with Houston re-established. The world below was in turmoil, but the resistance was already forming. Avery knew their fight was far from over. Humanity's resilience would be tested like never before, and the crew of the ISS had a front-row seat to the beginning of a war that would shape the fate of two worlds. The bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains hummed with activity, a hidden nerve center for humanity's desperate struggle against the alien invaders. Rows of monitors glowed in the dim light, displaying live feeds of the carnage above. Military leaders, scientists, and a handful of civilian experts crowded around a massive table in the middle of the room. On it lay a holographic projection of the alien mothership and its fleet, orbiting Earth like a silent predator. General Marcus stood at the head of the table, his grizzled face etched with frustration. He slammed a fist against the console, causing a few startled glances. Every minute we waste, they're tightening their grip. We need actionable intelligence, not theories. Dr. Elara Chen leaned forward, her glasses catching the faint glow of the hologram. Her voice was calm but insistent. General, their actions suggest survival, not conquest. They're targeting resources and infrastructure, not civilians. If we understand their needs, we might find a way to negotiate. Negotiate? Marcus snapped, his voice rising. Tell that to the cities they've leveled. The only language these invaders understand is force. Before Chen could respond, the door to the room hissed open, and a group of resistance fighters entered, their boots echoing against the metal floor. At their head was Kael, a young hacker with an unshakable confidence. His mismatched armor, a patchwork of scavenged gear, hinted at his resourcefulness and disregard for authority. Sorry to crash your war council, Kael said, his tone laced with sarcasm. He tossed a dated chip onto the table. But I've got something you'll want to see. Marcus glared at him. Who let you in here? Relax, General. I'm here to help. Well, as much as I can without a proper introduction, Kael shot back. He gestured toward the chip. It's a slice of their communication network. Took some doing, but I cracked it. They're not as invincible as you think. Chen's curiosity piqued, and she inserted the chip into a terminal. Alien glyphs and data streams filled the screen, indecipherable to most but not to Kael. He leaned over her shoulder, typing rapidly. Moments later, the projection shifted to highlight a section of the mothership. This here is their command hub, Kael explained. It's coordinating the entire invasion. Shut it down, and they're flying blind. And how do you suggest we do that? Marcus asked, skepticism dripping from his words.
Kael smirked.
Oh, it's simple. We get a team inside, plant a virus I've cooked up, and watch the fireworks. Easy, right? You're insane, Marcus muttered, rubbing his temples. We can't even get close to that thing without being obliterated. He's not wrong, Chen interjected. If we can disable their command, we might force them to negotiate. But it's a massive risk. Kael folded his arms. Risk is all we've got left, document. Or, do you have a better idea? The room fell silent as everyone considered the audacity of the plan. Finally, Marcus sighed.
Fine.
We'll consider it, but I want contingencies. If this fails, I'm not leaving Earth defenseless. Kael grinned. Good. Because failure's not on the menu. Over the next few hours, the room buzzed with preparation. Schematics of the mothership were analyzed, and a team was assembled. A mix of seasoned soldiers, tech specialists, and Kael's ragtag resistance fighters. Dr. Chen insisted on joining, arguing that her knowledge of alien biology might prove invaluable. Marcus begrudgingly agreed, though he made it clear he'd hold Kael personally responsible if anything happened to her. As the team suited up in the armory, Kael approached Chen. You sure you're ready for this? It's not exactly a lab experiment. Chen adjusted her helmet, her expression resolute. I've spent my life studying the possibility of alien life. Now it's here, and I'll be damned if I sit on the sidelines.
Kael nodded, impressed.
Fair enough. Just stay close to me up there. These guys don't play fair. The team boarded a retrofitted stealth shuttle, its surface coated with an experimental material designed to evade alien sensors. As the engines roared to life, the weight of the mission settled over them. Each member knew the odds were against them, but the alternative, inaction, was unthinkable. The shuttle ascended into the night sky, piercing the atmosphere and entering the void of space. From their vantage point, the alien mothership loomed even larger, a monolith of alien ingenuity and menace. The team's pilot, a grizzled veteran named Jax, guided the shuttle with practiced precision, weaving through debris fields and evading patrols. Approaching insertion point, Jax announced, his voice steady despite the tension. Brace yourselves. The shuttle docked with a maintenance port on the mothership's underbelly. The team disembarked, their boots magnetizing to the alien surface. The air was eerily silent, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's systems. Stay sharp, Kael whispered, his voice barely audible over the comms. We're in their house now. Navigating the labyrinthine corridors of the mothership, the team encountered bizarre, biomechanical structures. The walls pulsed faintly, as if alive, and alien glyphs glowed softly, casting eerie shadows. Chen marveled at the alien technology, but there was no time for study. They moved with purpose, following Kael's hacked schematics toward the command hub. Their progress was halted by a sudden noise. A low, guttural growl echoed through the corridor. From the shadows emerged an alien sentry, its elongated limbs and glowing eyes giving it an otherworldly menace. The team froze, each member gripping their weapons tightly. Wait for my signal, Marcus hissed, raising his rifle. The sentry tilted its head, its movements unnervingly fluid. Then, with a burst of speed, it charged. Marcus fired, his shots precise. The alien's shield absorbed the first few blasts before faltering, and it collapsed in a heap, its glowing eyes dimming. We've been made, Kael muttered. Expect company. The team quickened their pace, their nerves on edge. Alarms began to sound, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to reverberate through the entire ship. Kael led them down a series of side passages, evading patrols and automated defenses. Each step brought them closer to the command hub and deeper into enemy territory. Finally, they reached their destination. The command hub was a vast chamber, its walls covered in glowing panels displaying alien data streams. At the center of the room stood a towering console, its interface pulsating with energy. Above it, a holographic projection of Earth rotated slowly, a stark reminder of what was at stake. Kael approached the console, his fingers flying over his portable terminal.
"Give me a minute," he said.
"This thing's more complex than I thought." "You've got 30 seconds, Marcus growled, his weapon trained on the door. As Kael worked, the room's lighting shifted. A low rumble filled the air, and a new figure emerged from a side passage. It was an alien commander, its presence commanding and its armor glinting with an iridescent sheen. It carried a weapon unlike anything the team had seen before, and its eyes glowed with intelligence and fury. The alien spoke, its language a series of clicks and tones. To their surprise, their translators activated, rendering its words intelligible. The battlefield stretched across the Great Plains, a patchwork of smoldering craters, abandoned vehicles, and hastily constructed defenses. Humanity's combined forces had assembled here, a desperate attempt to push back the alien invaders. Soldiers from every corner of the globe manned their positions, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and resolve. Overhead, the skies were a chaotic tapestry of swirling clouds, streaks of energy fire, and the ominous silhouettes of alien crafts. General Marcus strode through the command post, his voice cutting through the cacophony of radio chatter. "Keep those flanks secured. We've got reports of aerial reinforcements inbound." His uniform was smeared with dirt and ash, but his eyes burned with determination. Around him, commanders and communication officers relayed updates, their movements frantic yet purposeful. In a trench not far from the front line, Kael and Dr. Elara Chen crouched behind a makeshift barricade. Kael's fingers danced over his wrist-mounted terminal, a constant stream of alien code flashing on the screen. Beside him, Chen clutched a small device, a prototype disruptor they'd salvaged from the alien mothership. "Tell me this thing actually works," Kael muttered, not looking up from his terminal. Chen adjusted her glasses, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "It's designed to emit a pulse that disrupts their command signals. If we can deploy it near one of their control units, it should give us an edge."
Kael smirked. "Should."
Love the confidence. Before Chen could respond, a deafening roar filled the air. The ground shook as an alien walker, a massive, four-legged war machine, emerged from the haze, its energy cannons glowing ominously. Soldiers scrambled to reposition, their weapons firing ineffectively against the walker's shields. The machine advanced relentlessly, its movements mechanical yet strangely fluid. "We need to take that thing down." Marcus's voice sparked over the comms. "All units, focus fire on the walkers." Kael glanced at the disruptor in Chen's hands. "Think your gadget can handle that?" Chen hesitated. "It's not meant for direct combat, but it might overload its systems if we can get close enough." Kael grinned, his expression equal parts daring and reckless. "Close enough. My specialty." He grabbed the disruptor and motioned for Chen to follow. Together, they weaved through the trenches, dodging enemy fire and leaping over the wounded. The walker loomed larger with every step, its cannons raining destruction on the battlefield. Kael's heart pounded, but he pushed the fear aside, focusing on the task at hand. As they approached the walker, a squad of alien drones descended, their sleek forms darting through the smoke. Kael and Chen dove for cover as the drones opened fire, their energy blasts scorching the ground around them. "We're sitting ducks out here," Kael shouted, pulling his sidearm and returning fire. He managed to disable one of the drones, but the others closed in, their movements unnervingly precise. Before the drones could finish their attack, a burst of gunfire erupted from the side. A squad of human soldiers charged in, their coordinated assault taking down the remaining drones. Their leader, a woman with a scar running down her cheek, offered Kael a hand. "Thought you could use a hand," she said, her voice gruff but warm. Kael took her hand and grinned. "You've got impeccable timing, Sergeant." The sergeant gestured toward the walker. "You've got a plan for that thing? Or are we just distracting it for fun?" Kael held up the disruptor. We've got a plan. Just need to get this close enough to fry its circuits. The sergeant nodded. We'll cover you. Move fast. With the soldiers providing cover fire, Kael and Chen sprinted toward the walker. Its massive legs moved with unnerving precision, each step shaking the ground. Kael scanned for a weak point, his mind racing. Then he saw it, an access panel near the base of its rear leg, exposed as it shifted position. There, he shouted, pointing. That's our spot. Chen hesitated, glancing at the towering machine. Are you sure about this? Not even a little, Kael replied, flashing a roguish grin. But it's all we've got. They sprinted toward the walker, dodging debris and incoming fire. The sergeant and her squad provided relentless cover, drawing the walker's attention away. As they reached the access panel, Kael knelt and began prying it open, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Hurry, Chen urged, her eyes darting nervously between Kael and the walker's cannons. Almost there, Kael muttered, sweat dripping down his face. With a final twist, the panel popped open, revealing a tangle of alien circuitry. He positioned the disruptor inside, its interface lighting up as it synchronized with the walker systems. And done, Kael exclaimed, slapping the device into place. Let's move. They scrambled away as the disruptor activated, emitting a high-pitched whine. The walker staggered, its movements becoming erratic. Sparks flew from its joints, and its energy cannons flickered before going dark. With a final, shuddering groan, the machine collapsed, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. Cheers erupted across the battlefield as soldiers rallied, their morale bolstered by the victory. Marcus's voice came over the comms, filled with rare approval. Excellent work. Now, let's press the advantage. Kael and Chen regrouped with the sergeant's squad, their faces flushed with adrenaline. That was insane, Chen said, her voice trembling slightly. But it worked. Kael grinned. Told you. Failure's not on the menu. The battle raged on, but the tide had begun to turn. With the walker disabled and the disruptor's technology in hand, humanity had a newfound weapon against the invaders. Yet Kael couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The aliens would adapt, and their true intentions remained a mystery. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the battlefield in a fiery glow, Kael stood beside Chen, gazing at the distant figures of retreating alien forces. This war's far from over, he said quietly. Chen nodded, her expression somber but resolute. Then we'd better be ready.